welcome to Play With It with Cass Allen. We're still in that dating pool. Been in there for a minute. We're going to keep going. Today, we're talking about being in the dating pool and knowing when it's time to move on. Uh, some of you don't hear people when they say, see ya. You need some help on decorum when it comes to getting your stuff, shared friends, dividing families. So we're going to try to hit on those things today. As always, we try to define our platform, the context of the conversation, what we mean by the terms we use. And when we talk about time to move on, we mean it's just that. It's time for you to move on. You may have dated someone once, 15 times. It doesn't matter. Sometimes a date leads to, it's time to move on. You hit a place where you decide, this person is not for me, or this person is for me in a different way. This person should be my friend, or it should be someone that I have a business network with. So we're talking about moving on, knowing when your time is up, or when the person's time is up. Sometimes you just need to accept that, you're trying to date someone and they're not for you. Sometimes you have to accept that you're trying to date someone and you're not for them. Isn't that the purpose of dating? Y'all know I like to liken dating to a supermarket. You go in there, you check things out, see what you're coming out with, what you might go back and put back because it's not working for you. I don't want this item. Or I had a bad experience with this item and I'm not going to purchase it anymore. Or this is not what I thought it was based on what I read or what I heard or what I saw, or whatever the case, it's not what you anticipated. Sometimes you might, get an item that everybody loves, but you don't love it. You might be dating someone that everybody's giving rave reviews, but your experience with them may not be the same. And you're like, yo, it's time for somebody to say, see ya. You know, there's no need to waste each other's time. It's a song. If it doesn't fit, don't force it. Just relax and let it go. Just because that's how you want it doesn't mean it will be so. Something I heard in my youth that I think is very appropriate. Sometimes you really do just have to say, see ya. It has nothing to do with hate to be ya, just not working. Not everybody's compatible. That would be an interesting world if everybody you dated was magic. I mean, that would be some creepy shit. And like, in that case, couldn't you just be with anybody if there's no difference? There are people out here you think you're attracted to, and once you see what's inside the shell, you're not anymore. You know? There are people out here, you just both nice people, but you don't have enough in common to justify a relationship. There are people out here, you just don't belong together as lovers. And you become best besties. There's so many reasons that it may be time to move on. It's not always necessarily move on forever. It's move on from that dating shit forever. There's no need to revisit it. And that's another topic, time to move on and transition into something. We're just going to stick today to just move it on. Sometimes it is just that. We don't get along. We don't need to know each other. We had a great night, but it's not meant to be anything else. Just because you have fun with someone, it doesn't mean you're supposed to develop it into anything else. Sometimes a great day or night is just that, a great day or night, a great experience, something that we should enjoy and remember instead of always trying to foster things into something else, like I was talking about on an earlier show. You have a great day and you both have a great day and you think it meant more than it did when it was just that, a great day, enjoying it for that. And again, some of you, it's not too time to move on that early. You do try to have a relationship with someone, you carry on some type of affairs. You put in the days, the weeks, the months, you dating on a regular, uh a tenth of your stuff is at said person's house and a fifth of theirs is at yours because there's some things you don't want to bring back and forth since, you're on a regular, you're doing your thing. But it's not necessarily, or it can be long lasting. You could have been at this for 5 years and you could still be dating. People date for a long time. You just never know. You could have been dating for 8 months, and some people start trading stuff in a shorter period. Whatever the case may be, you imagine you have some things that, said parties place and vice versa. You decide you don't want to date anymore. It's time to move on. It's time to get your stuff. Y'all know me. Just call it what it is. This is not working out. Whatever your reasons are, I need to get my stuff or you need to come get your stuff. At some point, if their parties are notwithstanding, get the judicial system involved to make a decision. There's no need to carry on for 3 months, 6 years, banging on each other's doors, cursing each other out. Get a more mature-headed person involved, that's fair, and let them decide, and or not even decide, but help you part ways if you need all of that. Me personally, I don't. I'm easy with stuff because it's just material. There's nothing I've had that I haven't had and had and had. And I feel as long as we know how to adapt and hopefully, show some gaining power, I have. I can only hope. Sometimes you got to get that stuff. Try to not be there at the same time or have a mediator on both sides so that nobody's worried about their stuff. Have a photo taken of what you're going to pick up and what that person's going to pick up and have some mutual friends that you send those photos to and make sure that shit transpired. It's not that hard. A lot of you be waiting for a motherfucker to be home so you can go over and get yourself and start some trouble when it's really not necessary. Just go get your fucking stuff. Even if you're mad, you feel like you've been wronged, just go get your stuff. A lot of times it leads to shit that's not worth it. We're reading more and more about abuse in the news and domestic violence. People are losing their minds over monkey booty. I personally don't encourage it. I don't think anybody's worth going to prison over their genitals. I don't need access to genitals to the point where I'm willing to be arrested. I don't need access to genitals to the point where I want to be on probation or in juvenile detention or anywhere that has to do with the judicial system because I got angry because either I could not access your monkey ass or someone else was accessing it or a combination of the two. I personally don't think the smell of monkey booty moves me to commit such egregious acts, but I understand that there are people out there that feel that way. I can only encourage you to try to think way before you get upset. Enough about the situation so that if you're ever faced with it, you don't end up in a situation where you're doing 40 to life because of the way somebody's ass smells. Because that's basically, I don't know what it comes down to. I'm mad because somebody else smelled your ass and had access to it. And now I'm going to commit a crime so horrific that I'm going to jail and you're going to have permanent damage or either a fatal ending. And I'm still trying to figure out, no insult to anyone, why it's worth it. It's not. And if you could get it through your heads that it's not, stop this self-esteem bullshit. Let it go. You're not just going to have stuff in common. More than likely, you're going to have friends in common or acquaintances. You go out with couples or you introduce your piece to your friends and vice versa. Within those parties, you're going to be faced with situations where someone's pulling out and everybody they know is pulling out with them too. You know, don't let yourself get caught up in your mate's posse of friends and don't have your own, and then they pull out on your ass and you suddenly laying there by yourself because you didn't nurture your own friends, you know. Some people tend to get involved in relationships with people in an intimate relationship and forego the rest. There's a difference between reduction and foregoing. You know, they swap them out. And then you're forced into a situation where you're going, damn, where are all my people? Because you didn't nurture them at all. And somebody else and their friends dropped out. You know, try not to let that be your life unless that's your thing. You know, if you like just being a me too and following other people and sucking on their lives and not having your own real relationships, you know, I can't tell you what to do. I just advise if you don't want to get caught out there when somebody pulls all that away from you, at least have a fucking backup plan, right? You know, and that also cascades into family, you know. Sometimes you be dating a person hard and you've met everybody in the family and everybody loves you, or the most of them do, and you break up with someone, sometimes you lose access to the whole family, you know. Some of y'all gotta learn how to relax, and when it's time to move on, it's time to move on. You grow very close and attached to people very early within relationships, and then when they pull out because they're not feeling how you feel and you're devastated because you poured all of this into their family and their friends and you didn't nurture your own relationships, you know. Sometimes that's why it's difficult for some people to move on because they're caught in a web of relationships that all depend on each other. And one tiny slice, you know, severs everything, as opposed to the person with the rich and healthy relationships all around who's willing to tell you to go fuck yourself in a heartbeat because of the understanding of what it is like to have rich and healthy relationships that make sense and might not feel that you fit in, you know, in that context. So, you know, if you're out there dating, pay attention to when it's time to move on. Sometimes people are trying not to hurt your feelings. They're trying to take it slow. You know, pay attention to when people pull back and they're still there. Sometimes it's just right in front of your face. I don't want you anymore. I don't do anything with you anymore, but I'm in the room being polite to you because I don't want to hurt your feelings, so I'm going to try to make you break up with me. You know, and if you take too long, sometimes you catch them in a position with somebody else they've transitioned to, or they finally tell you, like, look, when this is fucking over. They'll even say, I gave you all the signs. You know, and suddenly when they say it out loud, your brain clicks and all of a sudden all the puzzle pieces are solved and you understand what's going on, you know, even though it was always right in front of you. So to wrap this up, as we explore when it's time to move on, like I said, just pay attention to everything around you. Use that discernment that we talk about throughout the shows, you know. Ask the source for the ability to feel, you know, what people don't say. You know, if you're one of those that run your mouth all the time, close it and watch the audience, watch your mate, watch how this person that you're dating, whom you're dating, treats you and how this person treats everybody else. You know, there are clues if you slow down and pay attention to what's going on. And sometimes you do need to be mature enough to be the one that says, hey, this is not working out. I've done it and I've had it done to me. Hell, I've been dating a long time, over 4 decades, in between, you know, tying a knot here and there. But the bottom line is, you know, It's okay if people want to move on, as I said in the beginning. It's not always something wrong with you. Some people are just not ready for you delicious, you know. It really is that simple. Some people can't meet your pockets. Some people can't meet your heart. Some people don't feel as pure as you. Some people are like, nah, she's too nice for me. I'm an asshole. Oh, I got a drug problem they don't even know about. You don't know what people going through a lot of times and they don't want to tell you. Sometimes it's just time to move on based on vibes. Something feels wrong. Might be exciting, but they also fucking bats and vultures flying around. Pay attention. It's my last offering to you. Like I say, use your discernment and ask the source to help you. Know when to say see ya, how to move with friends and family that you're associated with so you can, leave relationships with some calm demeanor, just like you leave a grocery store. You don't raise hell and fucking curse everybody out because the product wasn't good or it didn't work out. It didn't work out. So let that be a lesson, for us all, just to breathe a little easier as we come and as we go. This has been Play With It with Cass Allen. Have a good day and have a good night.